Neither of us have actually said the word. She has said, oddly enough, kind of casually, I had a sibling who stopped talking to her for a little while. And she said, I don't know what I ever did to her. You're the one who should probably not be talking to me. So there was kind of a small acknowledgement. I'm not sure if she actually said sorry. But at least on some level, she could acknowledge that what she did was wrong.
This is Post Ugly. I'm Ruth Solorzano. Coping with life's influx of relationships and environments is like walking through a field of mental landmines. Finding your footing can be next to impossible, and it can be difficult to share yourself with others, especially if the abuser is still in the picture.
I had an injury while I was home visiting that kept me at home for something like 2 or 3 months. And it was a very strange time because obviously some old patterns start to happen. And she would be very loving and very nurturing and very kind. And then the minute I started to show some self-sufficiency, like, I don't need your help going to the bathroom anymore. I was sleeping in a recliner in her room. And when I said, okay, I can sleep in a bed now, I'll still need your help getting in and out of the shower, that kind of thing. But like, I'm getting more proficient. And she started lashing out at me then because I didn't need her, was how she perceived it. I'm at this point 27 years old. She threw a pizza at me. She laid into me so hard about, I can't even remember what, that I was on crutches and I could not put weight on my leg, and I like flipped. I got angry. I flipped the table. I was so desperately trying to get away from her. I like sat on my butt and went down the stairs, threw my crutches down the stairs, got down, and just was like, I can't. And then, of course, some of those same old things. You're ungrateful. I've been doing all of this for you. Well, I didn't need you to. You offered. I could have figured something else out, but you're my mom. This is what moms are supposed to do.
Sometimes I think that we believe that folks have changed because the abuse has stopped.
Here's Dr. Christie Jenkins.
But then again, you get in a situation with that person and you see that a lot of the same old patterns are there. So maybe they're not putting their hands on you anymore, but they're still manipulating you with their thoughts or their presence or their looks, or, they still have some kind of a hold on you. So I would be cautiously optimistic if you believe yourself to be able to have a relationship. But first and foremost, you have to put up those boundaries. If you start to feel like you felt during the abuse, then it's time to see your way out, at least for a period of time, and kind of rebuild yourself before you would go back and try and make something work.
So after the come down of all of that, I said, you can't keep kicking me when I'm down. I needed your help, and I'm literally in constant pain. I tore every ligament in my knee, and I've done nothing wrong. Again, I've done nothing wrong. And I said, I don't understand why you are doing this to me. And she said, I think I've always been jealous. You're so beautiful, and you're smarter than me, and you're more talented than I could ever dream to be, which makes sense to some of the stuff when I was hitting puberty, more self-sufficient. I'm becoming a woman and all of that, which I don't know if for me it made it better or worse. Just like, okay, well then why don't you go get the help that you need to deal with these problems?
So if we look at the research, it says that 1% of abusers change on their own. So that's 1 out of 100. Those are not good odds. Typically, they do not change on their own unless there's been a major incident. They've gone to prison, or someone has died, or there's something completely traumatic. Rarely do they ever change on their own.
There are so many things that we could do to prevent violence, to address violence, to actually try to make change.
This is Leigh Goodmark. She's the Marjorie Cook Professor of Law at the University Carey School of Law and the author of Decriminalizing Domestic Violence.
And they range from individual interventions with people who use violence in ways that actually acknowledge the trauma that they may have experienced or other kinds of correlates with their violence, to big structural changes like increasing the minimum wage. Research has shown that increasing the minimum wage by $3 an hour would lower crime. It also means going way back to the beginning and looking at, for example, the interrelationship between adverse childhood experiences and the perpetration of intimate partner violence. The more ACEs that someone has, or adverse childhood experiences that someone has, the more likely they are to perpetrate violence. So how do we prevent people from experiencing child abuse and neglect, from experiencing community violence, from witnessing intimate partner violence in their own homes? How do we intervene with those families to make those conditions less harmful and to address children's trauma so that when they get into relationships as they get older, they don't perpetuate that trauma in their own relationships? We need to be looking at things like nurse-family partnerships, where nurses are going in and helping families who might be experiencing some of these problems try to remedy them. We need to look at interventions at the middle school level when people are just starting to get into relationships to help them understand that the use of violence is not a healthy way to be in a relationship. We need intervention programs for people who are already using violence that are actually attentive to the conditions of their lives. And then we need these bigger structural changes around economics and around the ways that we understand justice that might actually help us to prevent some of the violence that we're experiencing.
Finding ways to relate to others can prove to be complex. The constant nagging of the abuse can remain locked inside and create chasms in relationships, even with those closest to you.
I'm not as accessible as a person as I'd like to be. There's a lot of walls and things. I mean, I hope my children don't feel that way. Sometimes I think I could have been a warmer person. My daughter, I'll say this, her dad is always, he's such a freak, but he tells her things all the time. Every time he tells her something, he tells her, don't tell anyone. It doesn't matter what it is. It shouldn't even be a secret. It's just he's very don't tell anyone. And yet he tells her. And he's probably told 3 other people. And he's told them not to tell anyone. Mm-hmm. He has this urge to share information. But he always qualifies it with don't tell anyone. And she was saying to me, I don't know why he does that, Mom. She goes, I like you better, Mom. You're an open book. And I thought to myself, no, I'm not. I just don't tell you. I don't have to qualify it. If there's something I want to keep secret, it stays secret. You don't know that I'm an open book. You don't know me.
The tear down that you've experienced as a survivor runs very deep, and it can be incredibly scary to trust anyone. So you might have walls up, you might have a lot of acquaintances, but not a lot of close friends because you don't allow folks to get in that deep. And I would say that everyone processes this in different ways. Just like we see when children have been abused, there's attachment issues. And so some folks will have 0 boundary issues and just sit on someone's lap or, go get in a car with somebody or something like that. And other folks will be like, oh, hell no, I'm not talking to anybody. I'm not doing anything. I'm not being around anybody, and kind of self-isolating.
How close were you with your mom?
I was very close to my mother. Not as well. We've lived such a distance. Mm-hmm. I was really close to her when I lived up there. No, not as much anymore. You know, I don't like to go up there because she's still married to my stepfather. I don't want to hurt her, so I have to kind of pretend that everything's, you know, fine. And, it's never really been fine. As I've gotten older, I just am intolerant of that kind of artifice, I guess. I mean, I'd like to go up there now. I miss her,
Yeah.
I mean, I'll put myself through it once in a while, but it's not something I enjoy doing.
I think that some people don't understand the scope of the abuse. And most folks want everything to be okay, and they want you to have a relationship with the abuser, and they might not understand that that might not be okay for you.
Your environment and surroundings can easily become your worst enemy post-abuse, and learning how to steer through the turmoil can be a task difficult to handle on your own.
I find the triggers for sure, all sorts of things, like the smell of summer, and I realized I didn't really know what triggering was, but basically I find myself coming out of a trance state. I'm like, oh shit, where have I just been? And I realized that's a sort of aspect of like post-traumatic stress, essentially. And I didn't know any of this, for years until I went to therapy, and I realized that's what was happening was I was kind of falling down this kind of rabbit hole and just was back there, back in the room with him and back in that experience. I'd be on the subway. Or just anywhere, and I'll find myself kind of emerging from this state. I'm like, Jesus. Where this guy lived, he lived next to a ginormous bakery, one of the biggest in the country. It's like the smell of bread just fucks me up. I don't like it at all. And, that's such a beautiful smell, isn't it? Freshly baked bread. But to me, it's like, it's not good. Very strange, not pleasant.
Triggers can be untreated mental health issues. When we talk about someone remembering a smell or remembering a taste or remembering what something looked like, I mean, that definitely smacks of PTSD. The first thing would be that there was some giant stressor where they either saw a trauma or experienced a trauma. They would be re-experiencing it in some capacity. So they're having unwanted or upsetting memories. They might have nightmares or flashbacks. They have emotional distress after exposure. So when we talk about somebody remembering a smell and it taking them right back there, that's what I'm talking about. They also spend a great deal of time avoiding places like that, trying to stay away, trying to not think about those thoughts or feelings. But we see a lot of major depressive disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, substance use disorders, OCD. We see a lot of self-harm.
According to the CDC, about half of people in the United States are estimated to have a diagnosable mental illness at some point in their lives. Despite the fact that medications and therapies exist, only about half of people with mental health difficulties will ever get treatment, even people with serious mental illnesses.
My parents were they were fine. It's just that I think that my mom probably suffered. She certainly suffered from depression. She was just very sad. She was just a very sad person. At least that's what I remember. My mom put it together maybe 5 years ago. I thought that my brother told my mom. That's what I believed for a couple of years. And since I don't really want to talk about it with them, I had to talk about it with them because I got into a real bad, emotional fragile place while I was visiting them. We just had to talk about it. Like, I saw pictures of me doing it because my mom was showing them, just showing the photo I was
doing karate.
Yeah, and I was just like, it was the worst one. It was the worst feeling I've ever had. It was almost like if you ever thought someone died, they didn't, and you had that horrible feeling that they dead, but they, thank God they not. It was like that. It was just awful.
I went to my grandmother's house not that long ago, and my siblings were visiting from California, or my brother, I think. We were at my grandma's house, and she has a bunch of pictures, old pictures of us, and she pulled out a picture, and it's me, my brother, and sister right at the age when it was happening to me. I was 15. I could just see my face. It put me back. And I didn't realize that was such a trigger for me, was just like seeing a picture of me when I was that.
I didn't know either. I had no clue. Caught me completely by surprise. Completely. I had to give it all them pictures.
You did?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did myself, actually. The next, after a day or so, I was okay. And I just went back and shredded it up. My mom was going to do it anyway, but she wanted to wait till I left. I came back here. This happened maybe 2 years ago. And I don't think that anyone can really understand what that's like, to have that feeling from a picture. Everyone thinks pictures are great.
The ripple effects from abuse may be innumerable, but learning ways to cope, sharing your truth, and being open to knowledge can evolve your outlook and can help you form a healthy relationship with yourself. The guest speaker for this season is Dr. Christie Jenkins, who is the CEO of the Family and Child Abuse Prevention Center and core faculty at Walden University. For more information and resources, visit fcapc.org. Thank you to our special guest, Leigh Goodmark. She's the Marjorie Cook Professor of Law at the University Carey School of Law and the author of Decriminalizing Domestic Violence. If you know of a child being abused, please report it to your local Children Advocacy Center or call 1-800-4-A-CHILD. Original music and sound production by Hugo Fowler. Original artwork by J. Brooks Robinson. This show was produced and edited by me, Ruth Solorzano. If you like Post Ugly, please follow us on Facebook and Instagram, give us a review, and subscribe on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. It helps other people find the show. And thank you to our courageous survivors for sharing your stories.